The Ministry of Finance and the Public Service presents Let's Talk Finance, a feature exploring the various elements of the economic program.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Finance here on Nationwide 90 FM. We continue to look at the work of the Revenue Appeals Division, part of the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service. My guest this week, as she was last week, Dr. Deloree Staple Chambers. She is the Commissioner of Revenue. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Great. All right. We spent last week looking at what I call the floor for this three-part discussion, looking at the transformation of the entity into what it is now, the legislative facilitation which has given new life to it, and how you and your team have been working to bring the revenue appeals process, the outcome down to industry standards, international standards, which you say 6 to 12 months. You noted we moved from 36 months resolution time to 24, and you continue to make improvements as you go along. Fine.
Right.
So with the base now established, let's move up the ladder somewhat. The revenue appeals process itself, if it is that you were now reading from that revenue appeals flow chart, I want you to visually guide the listeners through what that flow chart is, the various processes in it.
Okay. All right. So the appeals process begins with you receiving a decision from a revenue commissioner with which you have a dispute. That decision really is the outcome of an objection process within the tax department or the customs department. So it means that you would have had some meeting or some audit or an assessment. You did not agree with the findings and you objected, and they reviewed internally what they did. They review their decision, and then they give you a final decision, an objection decision. That decision is what you can now appeal to the Revenue Appeals Division. Mm-hmm. So with that decision, you can now file an appeal. There's a time limit established by the legislation. You have 90 days from the date of that decision from either the Commissioner of Customs or the Commissioner General of Tax Administration, Jamaica. Once you are ready to appeal, you need to complete the Revenue Appeals Division form, the RE01. Mm-hmm. And you can access that on the Ministry of Finance website. You complete that form and you attach the decision that you are appealing with it. The form requires information like your TRN and your contact information. Now, what I want persons to understand is that because we are independent of the tax departments, we don't have these kind of information already. Mm-hmm. All right? So it is not safe for you to assume that we know where you live, what your TRN is, or we know the facts of the case. Yes. We don't know. We are a different division. You're coming to a new, fresh set of eyes. So you have to be prepared to repeat yourself to provide this information all over again. Yes. It's a mistake. It's a common mistake that persons make. They think that we are one and the same. Some persons think that we are one and the same. And so they don't see the benefit of providing this information again. Mm-hmm. But we are different. We have nothing to do with the prior decision that caused this dispute. Yes. So you have to, it's like you're going to court. Yes. And you're saying to the judge, this person agreed with me. The judge was not there when you had the agreement, when you were aggrieved, dispute, yes. Right, when a dispute arose. So you have to be prepared to tell the judge from scratch what happened and why you're here. It's the same thing with us. So once you complete that form, you submit it. Our office is located at 12 Ocean Boulevard. That's the UDC Office Center building. We're on the first floor. You can email that in, or you can send it by mail, post, delivery, bureau, whatever means you can. You can even fax it in as well. And all those information is available on the Ministry of Finance website. Yes. Once we get that appeal, it goes through a period of validation, meaning that we'll check to make sure that is a decision that you can appeal. Mm-hmm. Because the law establishes certain boundaries in terms of what can be appealed. If it is a decision that was issued under certain sections of the the principal act, meaning the tax act, the relevant tax that you're appealing, say income tax.
Yes.
If it was issued under a certain section of the Income Tax Act, then that deems the decision final and conclusive.
Yes.
Then we cannot hear it.
Yes.
So we check for stuff like that. We check to make sure that all the information that you're supposed to provide us with is there. And then once it passed that error analysis, then we issue an acceptance notice. And it is entered into a workflow system, and thereafter it is assigned. It is profiled first to determine what method of resolution we're going to use, whether it's a fast turnaround, a fast track matter, or whether it should be a matter for settlement, or whether we need to have a formal hearing.
Yes.
Once it is profiled, it is tagged as such, and then it is assigned to the next available officer. Right now, it will join a queue, but it's better than it was before, meaning that it is joining a queue now, being assigned to someone. Prior to the start of this fiscal year, we would not be able to assign it to anyone because persons had so much work already, so to be in a line waiting to be assigned. But since the year began, last year we were able to bring down the inventory considerably so we can now assign them as they come in. But it is still joining a queue in someone's bin.
Yeah.
Our target is to try and turn around these matters that are coming in now within 12 to 18 months. So say you said you submit an appeal today, then we're looking at any time between 6 to 12 months or 18 months the most, you should get a decision.
Can I track the progress of my appeal through your system? Do you have that facility?
Sadly, no. Our system is not yet available for persons to interact with it. So it's purely internal now. But that's the next phase of our modernization. We're hoping that we will be able to, by fiscal year 2021, put all our procedure online in terms of people filing, tracking, and getting their decisions. What we do now, though, in terms of speed, is the effect that the decision has on the liability of the taxpayer for taxes that are administered by Tax Administration Jamaica. We have a function that we do in RAISE, which is the system that TAJ uses. So once we issue a decision, we go on to the taxpayer account and we update the taxpayer's account with that decision. So if the decision was vacated, meaning that the tax was removed or vacated, then what we do is go onto the taxpayer's account, update the account with that decision, and so it would remove the liability. So when next the taxpayer goes onto his account on RAISE, he would see that the appeal decision was issued and it removed the tax that was assessed.
From the time the taxpayer completes that form you spoke of, what's the name of the form again?
The Revenue Appeals Form.
And it's a RA
01.
there. That's the code I was looking for. So I complete my RA 01 and I submit the relevant
paper
attachments to
right.
it. So I drop it off by hand and I get
Collect your receipt.
That I did. How long before your team does the profiling, the assessment, and so forth? I want to get an idea of that.
Okay.
Because I know that people would have an issue, say, boy, it goes in there and it lasts in the system before it even reaches the queue. People complain because a man wants his thing resolved or a woman wants everything resolved, and a week for them is like a year, and they'll complain that it's an inordinate time when it's a reasonable time. So give us an idea of how long it takes for your team inside now to get those things running through the channel.
All right. So once you drop it off, you get a receipt immediately. It's either a hand receipt or if it was something that was emailed, you get an email receipt to say we have received it and we're in the process of validating it. Once the validation is done and it is accepted, you get and a formal notice now saying that we have accepted your appeal, and someone will be contacting you shortly to begin the process of hearing it, right? That is normally done within 10 days,
Yes.
10 working days.
All of that.
Yes. If it is not accepted, you get a rejection notice to say we cannot accept or we cannot hear for these reasons, right? If it is that you submit the appeal form without all the information, we give you time to supply the information, so we don't reject you off the bat.
Yes.
We give you time to perfect your appeal. So we give you anywhere between 7 to 14 days, depending on what it is. And while we're waiting on you, the file is pending in our system, so it has a pending status. So once you supply the information, then we assess that and we either accept or reject based on the nature of the issue. If we reject, then we tell you the reason why it is rejected. And we advise you what your next steps are. Your next step would either be to go and pay the taxes, or you can seek an alternative decision in the courts. Right? So once the matter is accepted, then it is profiled. It is profiled by one of the deputy commissioners, who are the team leaders, right? So they're the ones who assign the work to an appeals officer. So they profile it. That should take no more than 5 working days, and then it is assigned. Now, when it is assigned, it depends on the workload of the officer it is assigned to, because an officer can have up to 30 cases assigned to them at once,
including backlogs before
right,
legislative
exactly,
change in
right.
2015.
So I'm saying that your appeal will join a queue, but the queue depends on how much work the officer has, right? But based on where we are now, I don't see it taking more than 4 months for you to get a date for a hearing, based on where we are now. It's much better than, say, a year or 2 ago.
I want to give you the opportunity, Dr. Staple Chambers, to say something about the process from the perspective of the integrity of the process, because I know many people listening to you or reading up on the website the steps that the thing has to take will believe that, you know what, I know someone in there, so I can pass my thing to them and they'll get it through this thing quicker than it would normally take an average application to go through the process. Would they be wasting their time trying to do that?
Yes, they would. The process is transparent, and once a case is assigned to an officer, there's a negotiation that should happen between the taxpayer and the tax department for a date when all parties can meet to hear it, if it is that it's going to be heard formally like that. The hearings are chaired by the deputy commissioners or senior officers.
Yes.
So you don't have one person sitting in a hearing. So there's, so those are the checks and balances that exist. And the only time that a case may get, some attention is if some extra attention is if there is anything that causes a delay in one that is before it in the queue. So instead of sitting and waiting for someone else to come with their information, you begin to process another one.
Yes.
And depending on how it moves and how the parties respond, then that may be concluded before one had started before. So those are the only variations in how things go through the process. But to say someone can circumvent the process,
Right.
I don't see how that could happen.
Regardless of who you know in there and how well you know that person, they can't push the thing through faster than it has to go.
It has to go through.
It has to go
Second
through.
thing is, another thing is that all decisions have to be reviewed by a deputy commissioner or the commissioner. And so those are checks and balances to ensure that the procedures are not being tampered with.
Yes. All right, integrity of process. All right, we have to leave it there for this week. Join us next week for our final installation in this look at how the Revenue Appeals Division is doing its business, how it has modernized its processes to better serve you. Thank you, Dr. Staple Chambers, and I'm sure I'll see you back here next week.
Thank you, George.
Here you go. That's it for this week's episode of Let's Talk Finance.
That was Let's Talk Finance, brought to you by the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service.